the 2019-2020 president of the Public Affairs Student Association, or at Humphrey, we love acronyms, so also known as PASA. Every year, you never know what to expect, and this year has been a challenging one, not only within this community, but within the world around us. For myself, it has been one of personal growth and learning in ways I couldn't imagine. Fortunately, I have had the opportunity to work with a dean that not only values my opinion, but from those around her, and helps guide students such as myself at the Humphrey School, and helps them learn from the past and help us lead into the future. Laura Bloomberg has served as the dean at the Humphrey School since June of 2017. Prior to her appointment to dean, she served as associate dean for 4 years, during which time she led efforts to support the global expansion of the school, establish a national pathway program for college students underrepresented in the public affairs programs, launch a Master of Human Rights degree program, and develop the Mandela Washington Fellowship program to support young leaders from countries across Africa. She was recently named as the 2019-2020 Vice President and President-elect for NAPA, which is the Network of Schools for Public Policy Affairs and Administration. Please join me in welcoming Dean Bloomberg.
Good morning, everybody. One technical question. Am I switching these slides, Keith? Are you going to do this for me? Well, that'd be good, because then they won't collapse on me. Perfect. I broke our remote control at home the very day my husband said, let's get over these gender stereotypes and you should start using the remotes, and I did, and they broke. I'm not kidding you, so I'm a little afraid about these things. Anyway, it's good to see all of you here. Welcome staff and students and faculty of the Humphrey School. We have members of our advisory council here, our honorary council, and also our alumni board, all great supporters and friends of the school, and I'm grateful that you're here. You may know that our Constitution calls for the dean to annually present a state of the school to the community stakeholders to talk about what's happening at the school, and we do that in 2 ways. We do that over the last couple of years by producing this document. I think you would have seen it on the way in. Hopefully many of you have it, aptly called Humphrey Counts. At the end of each calendar year, we gather up the information that would be or could appear in an annual report, and we condense it into something that's much smaller, that's essentially a Humphrey by the numbers. And we do that because I'm not going to spend a lot of time in my comments today talking about the specific numbers, but we're certainly prepared to answer any questions that you have about the information that's in there. And I encourage you, if you didn't grab one, to grab a copy, because I think in a very succinct way, it tells the story of a school that is mightily working on many fronts to do a lot of things with a limited amount of resources, and I'm really proud of the work that we do. And I talk to you today, and I'm going to talk more broadly, more expansively than what is covered in Humphrey Counts about what I think of as the state of the school. And I've titled my comments today, The Paradox of Public Affairs Scholarship circa 2020, because I think we live in a time of real paradox in public affairs, and I will be talking about that. It's something that has fascinated me for a long time as I think about leadership, and increasingly it fascinates me as I think about what we try to do in a school of public affairs. And when I talk about paradox, I'm talking about this notion that there are things that seem like they are absolutely incompatible and yet all true, coexisting. And what is the leadership challenge to manage a paradox when in fact it may not be a problem that we can solve, but truly just a paradox to balance. So I'll be talking a lot about that today and situating it as it implicates and impacts the Humphrey School. But let me start by situating us first in time and in space. This is not new information to most of you, but I think it warrants thinking carefully about it. So we're here today in the John and Elizabeth Bates Coles Auditorium, an auditorium that's named after a man who, if you read his writings, had just a dogged determination to be a truth teller as the leader of the Minneapolis Star and Tribune years ago. And Elizabeth Bates, who founded Planned Parenthood in Iowa in the 1920s and 30s, before moving to Minnesota and becoming one of the first Caucasian women to hold leadership roles in the National Urban League and also the United Negro College Fund. Their son continues to serve on our advisory board, Jay Coles, and we've proudly named this auditorium in their memory. And we're situated, of course, in this auditorium in this school named after a fierce public servant who continues to inspire us in so many ways. And Hubert Humphrey had a lot of things to say that seem particularly relevant today. And in recent weeks, I've thought a lot about his line that freedom is hammered out on the anvil of discussion, dissent, and debate. And I think we've seen examples of where that works very, very well and where we are challenged in our country to think really about how we are hammering out our differences and engaging in productive dialogue on that anvil of discussion, dissent, and debate. And all of this auditorium in this school situated on the west bank of the University of Minnesota, nestled up right against the Mississippi River, exists on traditional and sacred tribal homelands of the Dakota people. All of that matters for the work we do. We are impacted by, and we are planted firmly in the space that we occupy. We're also here at a time when we're commemorating the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. We like to say that the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. Kind of true, but what it actually said was that states and the federal government could not discriminate in terms of voting rights on the basis of sex. But at that time, Native Americans weren't considered full citizens, and it wasn't until 1965 that we passed the Voting Rights Act, eliminating some of the very, very significant barriers impacting African Americans' rights to vote. We still struggle with that today, so we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment with some level of caution and some caveats about what it really means. We're also at a time when social media is having a tremendous impact on the type of work that a school like a School of Public Affairs does in terms of thinking about civic engagement around the world and the ability to capture the voices of many, many people. And yet, we're at a time when social media is having a tremendously detrimental impact on the mental health of many young people in this country and around the world. In my own professional background in educational psychology, an area where I continue to read quite extensively, it's alarming to me to see the increase in teen suicides that can be directly linked to the kind of cyberbullying that adolescents are lacking the ability to have the maturity to understand, and it impacts them deeply. So we see this paradox of something that gives us great access to the world and is creating tremendous harm at the same time. Along those same lines, we're operating at a time when technology and the growing field of artificial intelligence is allowing us to do things that we never thought possible in terms of solving problems, addressing disease, anticipating issues before they happen. And I just want to show you a clip that I find particularly fascinating. It has nothing to do with public affairs, but to me it shines a bright light on this question of how really impactful artificial intelligence can be. What this is going to show you, I think it's going to start playing right after I turn the slide. So it's going to show you, some of you may have seen it. Have you seen the clip about solving a Rubik's Cube with artificial intelligence? Anybody seen this? It is a program that a guy developed that takes all of the possible iterations of movements of a Rubik's Cube, like a human would do, and aggregates it so that we have all of that intelligence in one place. And this is what it looks like when a machine is designed with that artificial intelligence to solve the Rubik's Cube. That's how quickly it happens. Now it'll slow it down for you so you can see what it does. And if that was too fast, I think it'll go one more time a little bit slower. And even that is faster than I know I could do it. It's in less than a third of a second that artificial intelligence can solve the Rubik's Cube. Like I said, nothing to do with public affairs, but really indicative of the power of that. At the same time, though, this is a conversation I had with colleagues in Paris when we were there in January, earlier this year in January, with the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. We were talking about something that, if you Google this, you will see 100 articles similar to this. How artificial intelligence systems could threaten democracy. Because there's conversations that go something like this. If we know through artificial intelligence, through the aggregation of unbelievably huge amounts of data, very succinctly, if we know what people need, we don't have to ask people. If we can anticipate what people are going to do, we can stop it before it happens. I don't know about you, but I find that kind of terrifying. So I see a paradox in what we can do with technology and what, in fact, technology could do for us. So I think a lot about that. And closer to home, we're at a time when on this university campus and on many campuses across the country, we're celebrating the increasing role of women in leadership. Just this past year, we welcomed the first female University of Minnesota president. I think she's doing a remarkable job. And at the same time, this university, this school, and institutions of higher education across the country are grappling mightily with the unacceptable incidents of sexual misconduct on college campuses, an issue for which I and my colleagues will not look away. And one more, we are, and we should be at this school very, very proud of the equity and inclusion work we're doing, the efforts we're engaged in to try to make this school as inclusive in decision-making and in scholarship as possible. And at the same time, we are situated in a city where many of you saw these kinds of headlines, that the Twin Cities are ranked the nation's fourth worst metro area for Black people, in terms of housing, in terms of employment, in terms of income, and in terms of education. Again, we can be proud of our work, and yet we cannot turn away from these kinds of statistics. It's the paradox with which we work. This is the time and the place that we're planted in. This is the space that we inhabit. And this is the space where we will do the work of advancing our mission, to advance the common good in a diverse and changing world. So given this time, given these paradoxes, given these challenges, we didn't even hit on politics or climate change, just so you know that I know, we didn't do that. It would be really easy to be cynical about what it means to be in a school of public affairs, doing the work of preparing a next generation of public affairs scholars and practitioners. Far too easy to be cynical. And it's a cynicism that I would like to reject. 2 years ago, during my State of the School, I shared with you a quote, and it still remains one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, Zadie Smith. She's mostly a novelist and an essayist. She doesn't really write about public policy or public affairs, but she wrote a powerful essay about cynicism and hope. And she shares this: to live in the now with sincerity in our culture of cynicism is a difficult dance, one that comes easily only to the very young and to the very old. The rest of us are left to tussle with two polarizing forces ripping the psyche asunder by beckoning to it from opposite directions: critical thinking and hope. And here for me is the key line. Critical thinking without hope is cynicism, and hope without critical thinking is simply naive. We have no time for cynicism. When we think about what's happening in our politics, when we think about what's happening with climate change, when we think about what's happening with some fairly significantly failing faith and confidence in our public institutions, we don't have time for cynicism. We don't have time for naive hope either. We need critical thinking. We need to prepare scholars and future practitioners who will think clearly, clear-eyed, and critically about the issues we face. But we can't do that without having hope as well. And there, for me, is the heart of our public affairs paradox. How is it that we balance critical thinking without giving up for a moment on hope that we can do things better, that we can have a better future, and that we, in fact, can make a difference? So it is with that audacious belief in balancing critical thinking and hope that I think we try to live into our mission. And as I've said for several years here, we strive to fulfill our mission by reaching strongly towards 4 broad aspirational themes or priorities in the work that we do here. And I want to talk just briefly about each of these, and then I'm going to turn specifically today to the work of our students. But let me just give you a quick overview of some of the things happening in this area. And here I will reference the Humphrey Counts document if you have it in front of you. We talk about expanding pathways to public service leadership. It's about what we do. We are a school and we educate people. But I think gone are the days when we can, as a graduate program, expect that students will come lockstep through high school into college, graduate from college, and then a subset of elites will apply into graduate school and come here and get their master's degree and move on into the world. That happens for a large number of people. But more and more, we're seeing that people are constrained and limited by financial circumstances, family circumstances, or they have opportunities in the world, and it's not till later that they realize they want more education. It might be that it's not a master's degree they want, it's a certificate program that they want. It might be that they come here, stop out for a while to do some work, and come back. So we no longer talk about a pipeline. We talk about a pathway into and through public service leadership here. One of the things that I think we can really be very proud of, and you'll see in Humphrey Counts, is the substantial number of people who engage with the school outside of our degree programs. Many of you are familiar with the Policy Fellows program that we operate here. It is proudly celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. It has prepared a number of people who have leadership roles across this region and across the Midwest to have a deeper understanding of public policy and public affairs. I'm really proud to announce, sadly last year at this time I had to tell you that we were not going to be offering the Mandela Fellows program last year, and we didn't. We did not receive funding, and this year we did, so we are back. Some of you may know that we offered the Mandela Washington Fellows program for mid-career leaders from countries across sub-Saharan Africa for 5 years, and then for whatever reason the federal government saw fit to not fund us again. And there were 3 programs, not to be political or anything, but there were 3 programs that lost funding. It was the Humphrey School and another school very similar to ours and an HBCU that all lost funding for a year. And we raised a lot of questions and we raised a lot of cane, and we now have funding again. And so we this summer will welcome back our Mandela Washington Fellows, and I'm really excited about that. I also want to say something about expanding and amplifying our global reach and impact. You'll see in Humphrey Counts that this year, for calendar year 2019, we report that 9% of our student body are international students, students who come to us from outside of the United States. That's down a bit from past years. I believe last year we were at 11%. We'd like to see it a little higher than that. I think we all know that there are a lot of factors in this country and in elsewhere that are limiting the interest that students have in applying to universities in the United States, but also limiting access. We have had students that we have admitted who were denied visas into the country, and certainly always we will struggle with the issue of financial aid. But we are a better school community when we have students here from all over the world. Even when we talk about things like local politics, when we can take a critical perspective and look at things from multiple vantage points and have students in the classroom who are engaging in those conversations, we're a better place. But our international students are only a small part of what we think about when we think about our global reach and impact. I could talk about a lot of them. I just want to highlight 2 here. First of all, I'd love to give a shout out to my colleague in the Dean's office, Carissa Slaughterbeck, who last year breathed new life into a program that had sort of been on hold at the University of Minnesota. It's called Engaging Intergovernmental Organizations. It was a program launched out of the School of Veterinary Medicine, and it was an interdisciplinary program to look at these issues that are hugely implicated in the study of veterinary medicine. You're going to wonder where I'm going here, but this is really relevant to us. Hugely implicated in the study of public health, in medicine, and in public policy. And if you've heard the term coronavirus in recent days, you know that what happens in animal wildlife and in animal domesticated life and in human health and in public policy are deeply and inextricably linked. So for years, the School of Veterinary Medicine led a program that brought scholars, faculty members, postdocs, doctoral students together as a group to travel to places that look at these issues and to travel together and grapple together with these issues. So the group, I went on the trip about 5 years ago, and it was transformational for me. The group visits the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in Rome. It visits the World Wildlife Organization called the WIO, I believe, or the EIO in Paris. It goes to the World Health Organization in Geneva and the World Trade Organization in Geneva and talks about what are the implications of these issues that impact our animal food sources, wildlife, and human beings. So that program stopped for a while, and we decided it was a really important thing to do. So under Carissa's leadership, the Humphrey School reinvigorated that program, sought funding from partners across the university, and will now take a delegation on that same trip every other year. We did it last year, and we'll do it again in the next year. And I'm really proud of that. The other thing I'd like to highlight is a new partnership that we will establish with an organization called PRIO, the Peace Research Institute of Oslo in Norway, that focuses on peace and security, particularly in fragile states, war-torn parts of the world. We think that we have a lot to offer in that space, and so does PRIO. And with generous funding from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the country of Norway, we will be partnering with PRIO to develop engaged research initiatives that involve PRIO researchers in Norway, faculty and students here, to better understand what we can be doing to address peace and security in fragile states. I'm going to make it through this without completely losing my voice, but I am going to grab a drink. 2 days ago, I had no voice, so I'm doing pretty well. It's in March, I believe, that the first delegation of Humphrey faculty will travel to Norway for the meeting with PRIO, and then they will be back here, and over the next couple of years, we will develop a partnership that hopefully many people will be involved in, and you will hear much more about. This third area of promoting hope, opportunity, and equity in a changing America and a changing world, if we're not about this, I don't know why we exist. To me, this goes to the heart of what we do, that everything we should do should be about making the world a better place for the people who inhabit it. And we do so much in this area. I want to highlight one thing here. It's not in Humphrey Counts, but you have heard me announce it. And that is that this summer, we will be hosting a social equity leadership conference here. It's a national conference. It will be offered at the Humphrey School. And it will focus on all the ways that we are learning about social equity across many grand challenges, whether it's environmental, climate change, food security, the way we deliver health and human services, or the way we develop employment support. And we are just now reviewing proposals for panels and speakers at that conference, and it's looking really good. And I'm delighted to announce that the Federal Reserve Bank will be partnering with us and has actually offered, Neil Kashkari has offered to host a reception for that conference at the Fed. The following year, we will take that same social equity focus to South Africa and host an international conference in Cape Town, where the hosts will be the Humphrey School, the University of Cape Town, and the University of the Western Cape. And we will be inviting the world into a conversation about what are we learning from places in Africa, East Asia, the Global South generally, this country about real innovation that is really advancing the ball when we talk about social equity. And then finally, advancing institutions of democracy and civic life. Many of the paradoxes I talk about challenge that. This notion that artificial intelligence may bring about the end of democracy sounds dire, but they're real conversations that are having. I think that we can be very concerned about what we heard happening in Iowa in the past several days when it comes to people understanding what it takes to have a thriving democracy and a strong civically engaged society. These are not things to be taken lightly, and we're spending a lot of time here thinking about what it is that we do to strengthen people's faith in public institutions, to make public institutions worthy of that confidence, and to help our students understand their role in ensuring that we have democratic decision-making and a vibrant civic society going forward. One example of that is our certificate program in election administration. This is a fully online program. It was launched about 4 years ago in response to a presidential commission saying that we are really threatened by a decline in the number of people who truly understand the nuts and bolts of how elections are run. I don't know, none of us know exactly how the problems in Iowa happened. We are hearing about an app, but I think in the coming months we'll know something about, well, why didn't that app work? What were the challenges to this going well? We're also learning things about challenged elections in other countries, and heavens knows we're learning something about cybersecurity. We believe the Humphrey School has something to say and something to offer in this space, and so we decided to make this certificate fully online so people all over this country and increasingly people all over the world can access it and learn things about elections and cybersecurity. Equitable and accessible polling places. What are the laws? What are the federal laws? What are the governmental laws in any country? And what are the state laws that impact how elections happen? We are focused on that, and increasingly we have people like secretaries of state in different states expressing real interest in how we're doing this work. We also have an alum in this metro area who I think, regardless of your politics, I would think you would agree, sort of exemplifies a passion for democracy and civic life. He graduated from here not that many years ago, and he is now the first African-American mayor of St. Paul, Melvin Carter. We just heard him speak, a number of us, Carissa and I were at the mayor's breakfast. I know many of you were there as well last week, and to hear Melvin Carter talk about his vision for what engagement looks like in St. Paul is pretty inspiring. I'm happy to announce that we have invited Melvin Carter to be our commencement speaker this year. And although I can't confirm it yet because he has a policy of not absolutely confirming speaking engagements until 3 months before the event, which would put us, like, I think something like next week, it's been on his calendar since November. So I'm knock on wood, fairly confident that he will agree to do this. So those are just some examples. There's so much happening here. It would be not a good use of your time, and I would never be able to do justice if I tried to give you a laundry list of everything that's happening. But this is the way that we think about the why, the heart and soul of what we do. And it's the faculty and the staff that I get to work with every day that inspire me to come to work and try to advance this work towards the mission that we have. I have to say, though, that when I think about this paradox of balancing critical thinking and hope, I think first and foremost about our students. I think about all of the ways that they challenge us to be better, to do better, to think differently, and to bring their own creativity and innovation to the work that we do. And so I want to spend the rest of my time just giving you a few examples. And I won't, again, be able to pay justice to all of the things going on here. That's not the intent. I just want to tell you about a couple of exceptional things that are happening, but I also want to preface it by saying, respectfully, These students are not the exception. They're doing exceptional work, but there's exceptional work happening all across the school, and I really believe that. So first of all, I want to start with a couple of informal things that happen because students come together with or without the curriculum that we offer them. Earlier this fall, I was invited to attend a forum that was totally organized and led by Humphrey students and their community partners and partners across the university. The forum was titled Disarm the University of Minnesota Police, a campus and community forum about police violence. Now, this is not an easy topic to explore. It's a topic about which many people have many different feelings and different opinions and personal experiences that conjure up a lot of pain and frustration and anger. It would be a challenging forum for even the most skilled facilitators to lead. And so I really didn't know what was going to happen. I wasn't invited to speak. I wasn't invited to be there as the dean. I was simply invited like any one of us would have been invited to participate. And I have to tell you, that evening could have been a master class on civic engagement and the kind of dialogue that Hubert Humphrey was talking about. Those students organized a powerful and profound evening discussing this very contested topic. And I was so impressed. I didn't leave there agreeing with everything that anybody said. I'm not sure any one of us totally agreed with all of it. I learned a lot, and I am wowed by the extent to which the students who organized that could welcome in so many different voices and do it well. I'd like to think that they learned a lot of those skills at the Humphrey School, but wherever they learned them, they did a beautiful job of it. Over the past several months, as many or all of you know, we have also grappled very publicly with unacceptable incidences of sexual misconduct within the school. Now, I personally have been challenged, and we as an administration have been challenged, and as a school have been challenged by students to push for more action. We've been urged to have more transparency. We've received a call for more student voice in this process. I want to be clear. Most students in the school were not directly harmed by the incidents that took place. Yet I want to be equally clear that all students in the school were impacted by the repercussions and the implications of the harm caused by these situations. These students did not choose to be here at a time when this was happening. They did not come here expecting to focus on the issue of sexual misconduct any more than Carissa or I expected to be focusing on this issue of sexual misconduct on college campuses. Yet these students are here. And despite busy schedules and jobs off campus, jobs on campus, internships, intense requirements, we have students who have said, we will turn our attention to this issue as well. We will take what we're learning here about civic engagement, about public policy, about how it is that we gather people together and analyze what's happening and figure out how to do a better job, and we will share those skills and those insights with you. And they have, during a fairly difficult time for the school. To be honest, getting pushback from students isn't always pleasant. And still, I'm very, very grateful for the time and effort that students have put into doing that for us. Closer to our curriculum, I want to share just a couple of examples that I just think are remarkable. One we talked about just this morning at our advisory council meeting. We recently posted on our website blog posts from students, a student group who traveled to Puerto Rico over winter break in January. They were there to study energy transitions and energy resilience as a part of our science, technology, and environmental policy programs. And they coincidentally happened to be there during a time of intense earthquakes and huge uncertainty in Puerto Rico. We didn't obviously plan it that way. I happened to be in Paris at the time, and Professor Gabe Chan was with the group, leading the group, so I was texting him back and forth in real time. And I said, do you think that we should be putting in place evacuation plans? Because at some points they were very, very close to where the earthquakes were actually happening. And Gabe said, no, the students are working with people in the community. They're helping each other be well provisioned. They feel as if they need to stay, and they feel as if they're learning a lot. I want to read to you just a short excerpt from one of the blog posts that one of the students wrote about this experience while they were there. We are studying energy resilience while also learning what energy resilience means in real time. We are experiencing the uncertainty of vital infrastructure like energy and water becoming unreliable. Our electricity and our water have gone out multiple times for long stretches without warning in recent days. It has been a surreal and unsettling experience for us, and we don't even live here. This week has provided a unique yet challenging opportunity for engagement and relationship building with our project partners and with community groups. Our group is still processing our experience in Puerto Rico, and we will for a very long time. But we feel certain that living through these uncertain conditions will change the way each of us approach our work in the future. We take with us a new understanding of the challenges that Puerto Ricans face. I'm really proud to say that that program and our connections with peers and colleagues in Puerto Rico will continue, and we will continue to be allies as Puerto Ricans seek a more resilient and a more sustainable energy future, and I'm really, really proud of that. We also had a group of students this fall working with Professor Maury Kleiner in a capstone, a culminating experience that did something that in many ways put us on the national stage for what might sound a bit like a niche issue, but I'm going to read enough of the preliminary report that the students prepared to give you a sense of just how significant this is. This is a group of students that worked with the National Governors Association, the National Council of State Legislatures, and the Council of State Governments to gather, evaluate, and disseminate information about state licensing requirements. It's not something that most of us think a lot about, but it's hugely significant. And the more I talk with the students and the more I talk with Dr. Kleiner about this, the more I realize just what a social justice issue this is. So let me just read an excerpt from the report that students prepared as they gathered this information. I'll preface it by saying that this has been posted, I believe, on the Council of State Governments website. And as Maury writes, the Humphrey School is now the key academic institution for developing data and analysis for the consortium around this important topic. So here's how the students in very plain language explain why this is so significant. Occupational licensing is a process of government requiring workers participating in certain professions or trades to be credentialed in order to be paid for their work. The prevalence of occupational licensing is growing in the United States with nearly 25%, nearly a quarter of all workers being licensed in 2019. The licensing process in the United States is extremely decentralized, with each state determining which occupations require licenses and what requirements are imposed to receive those licenses. This broad range of licensure procedures can lead to significant issues for workers, including their ability to find work in a new state that has different requirements for their profession. So we're hearing stories about things like people who braid hair requiring licensure and then not being able to move across state lines because they can't afford a new license. It's a questionable practice. The overall goal of occupational licensing is to ensure the health and safety of the public by requiring practitioners to be qualified to perform their work at a high level. Licensing is essential in some professions, of course, like dentistry is the example they use, or electricians. However, states overall continue to license more and more professions, including some with nebulous health and safety rationale, such as interior designers or florists. So this issue that many of us don't pay attention to, but it is so significant, we have Humphrey students now informing our state legislatures on the implications of the decisions they made. I think we should be really proud of that. And then for a moment, I want to turn to our doctoral students. A small group of our overall students. You'll see that we currently have 24 students in our doctoral program. It's tiny by design, and it is about preparing the next generation of public affairs scholars and theorists. And we have a remarkable group of students. I want to shine a bright light on one individual. He was highlighted recently on our Humphrey School homepage, Weston Merrick. is in our leadership and management area, and his research focuses on the usability of government services. Any one of us who has filled out a tax form might have an opinion about that. He, in his study, is particularly focusing on low-income people who access public housing. And his premise, I'm really simplifying this, is that many of the resources available to low-income people would be very, very beneficial, but the barriers to getting them are so onerous, oftentimes they're denied for reasons that can, he would argue, be remedied. So he writes, we all experience administrative burdens when we interact with our government, but low-income individuals have to do a lot more to overcome those burdens, to get access to things like food assistance or cash assistance. It's really a shame because we know these programs can be very effective at helping people. Weston recently received a grant from the United States Department of Health and Human Services to continue that work because I think they're very, very interested in what he is finding and what he is achieving. I won't go into all of the details, but I also want to just highlight that 5 of our doctoral students who study transportation and transit systems in this country and around the world all presented at the Transportation Research Board in DC in January. That's 5 people presenting at one of the most prestigious transportation conferences in the world, and about 13,000 transportation experts are there to hear it. So we're really proud of those students as well. And then finally, I want to share with you the work of somebody who's here. Where's Hunter? Hunter Johnson, who's in the middle of the auditorium here. Last week, I was able to see something that Hunter's been working on. Hunter comes to us, he's in our Masters of Human Rights program, but he comes to us as a skilled documentary filmmaker. And what's so inspiring to me about Hunter is that he's taking his documentary filmmaking skills and his growing knowledge and understanding of human rights and human rights policy to shine a bright light on issues that are crucial in the world. And I'm going to share with you, I'm going to cede 2 minutes and 3 seconds of my time to Hunter to share with you a trailer of a documentary that he's working on that focuses on people who are disappeared in Mexico. I think our students are pretty darn remarkable, and I think we should give them a round of applause. Hunter tells me that a working version of this full documentary will be his culminating project for his Master's in Human Rights degree, but it won't be completely done. He'll have months more work on this, and it's pretty fascinating to think about the work that he's doing and the impact that it can have, but it comes at a price, and it comes at some risk, and it requires a lot of courage, and my hat's off to you, Hunter, for doing that, and to all of our students. So these are the folks who are powering our future, who are powering our nonprofit organizations, increasingly finding places at high levels of intergovernmental organizations like the Food and Agricultural Organization, the UN, the World Trade Organization. They become mayors of our cities, 3 of them in Minnesota right now. They become legislators, they become policy analysts, and I like to think that they're going to be changing the world, and I'm really, really proud of them. So back to this notion of paradox and balancing critical thinking and hope, balancing the realities that we are doing audacious work here and still we struggle. I want to share with you in closing an image. Some of you are going to think I'm crazy. You're going to go, what does this have to do with the Humphrey School? But for me, metaphors are a powerful leadership tool. Sometimes when I struggle the most, I don't turn to the leadership literature, I turn to poetry. Or I turn to artistic works to find insight. And this is an image that I've been thinking about for a very long time, and so I was grateful to be in Paris in January so I could return to it in person. So I want to share with you this. So, a little quiz. What are we looking at here? It's the Louvre. That's right. And what are we looking at here? The pyramid. It was designed by architect, I heard it. I.M. Pei. Yeah. So I want to read to you some of the things that were in the French newspapers circa 1982, when it was announced that this pyramid would be the new entrance to the Louvre. And then as it was getting built. I'm going to give you another angle as you look at it so we can think about that angle of the pyramid. People slammed it. They hated it. They wrote it was an eyesore, an architectural joke, an anachronistic intrusion of Egyptian death symbolism into the heart of our beautiful Paris. I'm not kidding you. And a megalomaniac, no, I can't even say it, a megalomaniacal folly. Those were the things that they said. Here's the one that impacted me the most, though. This doesn't look like good architecture to me. Just last week, Mayor Carter, who's substantially shorter than any prior mayor of St. Paul, he pointed out, and is the first African American, said, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me some iteration of, you don't look like a good leader to me. To which he said, well, what does good leadership or look like? So I think about this as a metaphor because what I see is a Louvre, a structure that is 800 years old, and I see a structure that is less than a half a century old, built on architectural principles that are a scale of magnitude older than the Louvre itself. The fundamental beauty of the pyramids. And so what I.M. saw was something that would let a whole lot more sunlight into the Louvre, into this venerable institution that people adored. But it challenged us to see things in a different way, to see what's possible in a different way. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do. So when I think about my role as the dean of a Humphrey School of Public Affairs circa 2020, and I think about all the paradoxes we're living in, I think I don't have the creativity to imagine this necessarily, and I'm not sure that's my job. I think my job, our job collectively as faculty and staff and supporters of the Humphrey School, is to enable the vision of a new future for our policy institutions, our planning institutions, the work of public life, so that somebody can help let the sunlight in a new and creative way. That's what gives me hope. That's what gives me a great sense of optimism that when our students are equipped with the skills to be critical thinkers and the passion to be hopeful because they have the audacious belief in their own potential, they, like I.M. Pei, can bravely say, I have a new vision for what's possible here. And that's what I think makes this such a great school to be a part of. And so I would say, in closing, that the state of the school is strong. I think we're challenged by the work in the things that are happening in the world, and I think we're up for the challenge. Thank you very much. We have our finance director here. We have our associate dean. We have people who know a lot about the details of the school, plus me, and I'm happy to take questions and refer them to them on your behalf, or take questions myself if anybody should have any. Any questions at all? I got to do this so I can see. No questions? None? Waiting. Dr. Retha Clark-King, let me just say before you speak that we have with us one of our Public Leadership awardees. We will be conferring a Public Leadership Award on Retha later this spring. A remarkable member of our community and a remarkable member of our honorary council. Retha.
I love this speech.
Oh, thank you.
Do you share copies of it with others?
Well, I could, but I got to do a little work on it because a bit of it was ad-libbed. But yes, I'd be happy to share that. Yeah. Did you have a question too? Did you have a question, or do you just want a copy of my speech, Retha?
No, I just want to compliment you.
Oh, thank you.
I wrote down the last thing you said, your job to enable the vision, to enable something of a new vision as to what's possible.
Thank you. I think it's an important part of what we do. Anybody else? Otherwise, I will turn to a remarkable colleague of mine, Associate Dean Carissa Slaughterback, and she will do something that's always really fun this time of year. We will recognize employees of the school who have been nominated for and received Outstanding Leadership Awards. So please welcome Carissa Slaughterback.
Great, thank you. For me, this is always a great part of the state of the school, and I feel really privileged each year to be able to highlight many of our fantastic staff. So first, before I dive in and tell you about this year's award winners, I just want all of the staff who are in the room with us today to just raise their hands, and I'd love to give them a round of applause for all that they do. We have staff here who are amazing, contribute tremendously to our community, both inside of the Humphrey School and outside. We have staff who do things that are very visible and things that are not very visible to us on a day-to-day basis. But all of this work is so, so important. I think one of the things that I have especially loved in this job as Associate Dean is to get to know some staff who I hadn't connected with very much in the past, and to get to know them, to be able to work with them, to be able to understand the work that's happening at the school. And I value being with you every day here and know that you contribute so much. So each year we highlight a few of our staff with outstanding service awards. We have an awards and honors committee here at the Humphrey School that gets the pleasure of reviewing nominations. And every year we get many nominations for fantastic staff, and we're limited to giving just 3 awards. And this year we have 3 fantastic award winners that come from our already fantastic staff community. So with that, I'm going to dive in, and I have a few notes so that I make sure I'm drawing very directly from the fantastic nominations. And I'm going to share the names at the beginning. I'll share a little bit of background, and as I'm sharing that background, I'll invite the award winners after I announce them to come up, and we have a plaque, and we'll do a photo as well with the group. So our first Outstanding Service Award from our staff is Mary Lou Garza. As Mary Lou's coming up, I will note that she is an executive office and administrative specialist who's worked in a number of roles at the school. Right now, she's doing work with our human resources and development staff and programs, and is just doing tremendous work. I'll share a few quotes from the nominations. If you want. Mary Lou has a laser-focused sense of detail for the work she does. And where she can, she'll make improvements along the way to ensure it's being done most effectively. Mary Lou's diligence, positivity, and focus has been a source of motivation and engagement for the finance and HR teams, and her level of service to staff, faculty, and students is bar none. Notably, she has taken on the student hiring process and helps coordinate hundreds of student appointments each year. It's a tremendous volume, lots of detail, lots of deadlines, often deadlines that are missed, and she responds to that and is so gracious in working with all of us and getting our students into positions that serve them really well and provide them really, really important financial support. Also citing her attention to detail, another nominator noted, she continuously aims to understand and learn more about her work. This attention to details is very helpful as she's able to identify potential problems and work to resolve them early in the process. And one more, Mary Lou is also a personable addition to the school community, adding a spark of fun to match her experience and knowledge. She recognizes having a positive work environment makes a difference. So congrats, Mary Lou. Give you. All right, next we have the opportunity to recognize Meredith Dwyer with an Outstanding Staff Award. One of the nominations for Meredith stated simply, if there is anyone at the Humphrey School that exudes the idea of outstanding service, it is definitely Meredith. Colleagues note that she is always prepared, detail-oriented, always has a backup plan, and executes events with great professionalism and a service orientation. She represents the values and goals of the school as well. They also note the broader impacts of her work on events that engage those within the Humphrey community every day. I believe those gatherings are a huge part of how those people from outside of our community view the Humphrey School at the things we are working to accomplish. Another nominator, just one more quote, noted, her service to the school and support for events results in everyone involved, students, staff, faculty, community partners, invited guests, and other stakeholders, feeling respected, feeling cared for, and thought of while they participate in the event. She skillfully manages to support each individual event while applying lessons learned and building on successes from other events. We're really happy to have you part of our community. Congrats, Meredith. All right, and last but not least, our third award goes to Sherry Holman, our facilities manager. Sherry has been a fantastic contributor to the Humphrey School for many years, and as we all observed, 2019 presented a new set of challenges, not unexpected, but definitely new and interesting as we replaced the roof of the Humphrey School, plus had a number of other major construction projects happening. So a lot of the nomination conversation highlighted her work this past year, which was particularly unique. So as we navigated this major roof replacement project this summer, Sherry coordinated effortlessly across the school, across stakeholders. She coordinated with contractors. She worked with University of Minnesota facilities staff, and just so effortlessly kind of balanced all of the emotions and the stress and the noise and all of those pieces that made it possible for us to continue being here in the summer and doing the work that we needed to do. Her nominators described her as attentive, collaborative, supportive, professional, proactive, and showing skill and grace. Beyond the roof, Sherry led other projects, an update of the Freeman Commons, as well as the Josie R. Johnson Community Room. Both of these rooms are really, really important spaces in the school that serve our own community, but I think also play such a big role in serving our broader community. And I think Sherry brings so much perspective in creating spaces that are welcoming, that work for all of us, and are attentive to the interests of all of our stakeholders. So congrats, Sherry. All right, I get to close it out, and then we'll do a photo. But thank you again to the Awards and Honors Committee for their effort in sorting through fantastic nominations and making these really hard choices. And to all of you who nominated staff, it was such a pleasure to read through these and just reflect on all of the great work that's happening here. So I want to just say thank you so much for being here. We have the opportunity to connect as a Humphrey School community. We have members of the Dean's Advisory Council who are here today, others from our community, staff, faculty, and students, and an opportunity to gather for lunch. So I invite you to join us in the Mondale Commons. So thank you.